Dr. Alana Reed heard the siren before she saw the lights. A sharp whoop cut through the hospital district, echoing off glass and steel. She slowed, heart already tight, fingers still smelling faintly of antiseptic. 12 hours in surgery. 1 life saved. 1 lost. Her badge lay on the passenger seat, face down. The cruiser slid in behind her at the curb. Red and blue flooded her windshield, pulsing like a warning she hadn't earned. She rolled down the window. The officer leaned in too close, flashlight sweeping her face, her hands, the interior. His jaw set when he saw her skin, the tired bun, the scrubs under her coat. "License," he said. "Not a request. A verdict." She handed it over. He didn't look at it. His eyes stayed on her, cold, measuring, searching for something wrong. "Step out of the vehicle." "For what reason?" Her voice stayed even. Years of emergency rooms had trained it. He smiled, thin and sharp. "Don't get smart with me." A couple across the street paused, watching. Someone lifted a phone. Alana felt the familiar burn, the old knowledge rising. This wasn't about a traffic stop. This was about permission. The officer gestured again, slower now. "You people always think the rules don't apply." The words landed heavy, undeniable. Alana stepped out, the night air biting her wrists. His radio crackled. He turned away for half a second, listening. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A single notification lit the screen. "Urgent. White House line holding for Dr. Reed." The officer turned back toward her, hand dropping to his belt. The officer kept her license between 2 fingers, like it might stain him. "Sit tight," he said. Alana stayed standing because he hadn't told her otherwise. The curb was cold through her shoes. The hospital's emergency entrance glowed behind her, a place where voices mattered if they were bleeding. "Am I being detained?" she asked. He looked up slowly. "You are now." "For what?" "Failure to signal. Obstructing an investigation." "Attitude." "That's not a violation," she said. "And I signaled." He laughed once, sharp. "You arguing with me? I'm asking for clarity." "Hands behind your back." Her breath caught. "That's unnecessary." He stepped closer. "I decide what's necessary." A nurse across the street whispered something to her companion. A man filming shifted his weight. No one crossed the road. Alana's phone buzzed again. She didn't reach for it. "I need to answer that," she said. "It's urgent. Not my problem. It's federal." He paused, eyes flicking to her coat, her badge now visible where it had slid forward. He read it, frowned. "Doctor," he said. "That's supposed to impress me. It's identification. Plenty of people print fake badges. You can call the hospital." He shook his head. "You don't tell me how to do my job." She swallowed. "I've just come off a 12-hour surgery. I'm exhausted. I want to go home." He leaned in, voice low. "You should have thought about that before you decided to get mouthy." "I haven't raised my voice." "Exactly," he said. Always playing calm. "Like that makes you innocent." Her wrists tingled as the cuffs came out, metal flashing under the lights. "Officer," she said, each word measured, "this will have consequences." "There it is," he replied. "Threats. They're facts." He tightened the cuff 1 notch too far. She hissed despite herself. "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting. That's what they all say." He guided her down, firm hand on her shoulder, not violent, just absolute. The curb pressed into her thigh. The city hummed around them, indifferent. "Can I at least answer my phone?" she asked quietly. He checked the screen without asking. His face changed just a fraction. "Who's calling?" he asked. "Give it back," she said. "Answer it," he ordered. "Put it on speaker." She hesitated. "Now." She tapped the screen. A voice filled the air, crisp and controlled. "Dr. Reed, this is the office of the president. Please confirm you're safe." Silence stretched. The officer stared at the phone, then at her, recalculating. Alana met his eyes. Her voice was steady when she spoke. "I'm here," she said. "But I've been detained." The line went very quiet. The police station smelled of bleach and stale coffee, a sterile tension clinging to every corner. Alana sat on the edge of a vinyl bench, wrists sore from the cuffs that had left red impressions. The officer loomed across from her, shifting his weight, eyes trained on the space just above her shoulder. She could feel his presence even when he turned away to shuffle paperwork. "You understand why we're holding you, correct?" he said, voice flat, a line delivered more to himself than her. "I asked for clarification," she said. "You cited minor traffic violations. That doesn't justify prolonged detention." "Your tone," he replied. "Attitude counts." Alana's lips pressed into a line. The irony burned. 12 hours in the operating room, saving lives, managing crises, yet here a badge and a uniform reduced her to suspicion. She kept her gaze steady, refusing to let him see the storm rising inside. A door opened. A young officer entered, holding a folder. "Dr. Reed," the hospital called. "They confirm your identity, medical license, and recent surgeries." The man behind the desk grunted, barely glancing at the papers. "Verification doesn't change procedure." "It shouldn't," Alana said. "But it should affect your judgment. I'm being held because of my race. That's not procedure, it's bias." He leaned forward, elbows on the table, a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "That's a strong accusation. You want to put me on blast? You're welcome to. It won't make your cuffs come off any faster." Alana's hands clenched in her lap. Silence stretched, punctuated by distant clicks and hums from the fluorescent lights. She considered the officer's career path. The promotions, the commendations, the department politics that insulated him from consequences. Every microaggression, every selective enforcement incident she had endured suddenly connected, forming a lattice of systemic oppression that wasn't new. It was just now visible. A sergeant walked in, briefcase swinging. "Dr. Reed," he asked. "I'm Lieutenant Moreno. Heard you were detained. Let's sort this out." Alana's relief was tempered by wariness. "Thank you. I'd like to leave." Moreno nodded. "We've verified your credentials. This should have been cleared immediately. I'll speak to the officer directly." The man across the table bristled. "I was following procedure." "Procedure," Moreno said sharply, "does not excuse racial profiling. Do you understand that?" The officer's jaw tightened. Alana noticed the subtle shift in stance, the small retreat, a crack in the armor of absolute authority. He gathered his papers, avoiding eye contact. "You see," Moreno continued, turning to Alana, "we'll handle the paperwork and the report. You're free to go once that's done." Alana exhaled slowly, the tension in her chest easing marginally. But the reprieve was incomplete. Every second she had been detained had been a violation of not just her time but her dignity, a reminder that authority could weaponize itself when unchecked. As they walked toward the exit, the officer followed silently, hand hovering near his belt. A nurse from the hospital had arrived, clutching her ID. "Dr. Reed, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "We tried to call." Alana didn't respond immediately. Her mind replayed the encounter. The words, the gestures, the faces of bystanders who had recorded but not intervened. Each detail etched itself deeper into her awareness. She recognized the pattern, knew it wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom of an institution that preferred control over justice. Once outside, the cool night air hit her, brushing against the sweat and tension she hadn't realized was still clinging to her skin. The streetlights cast long shadows over the pavement, stretching the scene into something cinematic, almost surreal. "Thank you," Alana said to Moreno, "for doing what should have been done from the start." He nodded but didn't answer, as if to say actions mattered more than words. Alana moved toward her car, gloves in hand, shoes crunching softly on gravel. The officer watched, then returned inside, retreating to the comfort of bureaucracy and procedure. Alana started the engine, the hum of the car steady beneath her. She exhaled into the rearview mirror. The relief was temporary. She knew the story wouldn't end at the curb. Reports would be filed, colleagues would murmur, and her presence in federal communications could shift the narrative, but the harm of those minutes lingered. The hospital lights flickered in the distance. Inside, her team waited, surgeries scheduled, lives dependent on precision and focus. Yet she felt the weight of an invisible ledger. Every encounter like this left an imprint, a mark on her ability to trust, to assume safety in spaces others took for granted. She reached for her phone. The call was still waiting. From the White House. Alana's thumb hovered over the screen. Answering meant stepping back into authority, into expectation. Ignoring it meant allowing the moment of power to pass. She pressed accept. "Dr. Reed," the voice said, steady, clipped. "We're aware of your situation. Are you safe?" "Yes," she replied, voice even, though her pulse thumped in her ears. "But I've been detained." Then. "We'll address this formally. We need you to come in. It's urgent." She hung up, and the city hummed around her, indifferent and loud. Each light, each shadow reminded her. The system could fail her, but she had the tools, the knowledge, and the authority to confront it. Alana started her car, steering into the night. The detainment was not the end. It was the beginning of a reckoning, one that would expose the fault lines of power, prejudice, and procedural abuse. As she drove, her mind mapped the next steps, legal and strategic. The officer's words lingered in the periphery, a specter of bias that could no longer remain unchecked. She would not only return to her post at the hospital. She would make sure the story reached those who could hold him accountable. The night was heavy, charged, but she moved forward, every mile a reminder. Justice demanded persistence. Alana parked under the low hum of federal building lights, their glow washing the asphalt in muted yellow. She stepped out of the car, coat wrapped tight around her shoulders, gloves tucked into her pocket. The night was quiet except for the occasional distant siren, a reminder that the world outside her own struggle carried on. The receptionist at the secure entrance barely looked up. "Dr. Reed." "Yes," she said. Her badge and ID verified her almost immediately. She was escorted through hallways lined with muted portraits of past surgeon generals. She moved with a deliberate calm, every step measured, knowing the eyes in the building would assess not just her presence but her demeanor. Conference room door opened. Inside, a small team of aides and legal counsel waited. Alana took her seat at the head of the polished oak table. "Thank you for coming," said one aide. "We saw the footage. It's problematic." Alana's jaw tightened. "Problematic is being detained for 12 minutes while performing my professional duties. It's racial harassment." The legal counsel, a sharp-eyed woman with thin-rimmed glasses, nodded. "We'll ensure there's a formal complaint, but the officer's defense will lean heavily on protocol. We need every detail documented. Time, words, gestures, witnesses." "I've done that," Alana said. She opened her notes on her tablet, scanning the transcript she had dictated immediately after the incident. Every word counted, every gesture, every paused second of silence from bystanders. The aide handed her a secure phone. "We've contacted the White House liaison. They want direct confirmation of your status before escalating." Alana answered. The line clicked, crisp and precise. "Dr. Reed." "Yes," she replied, steady. "You're safe." "For now," she said, eyes narrowing. "But I've been subjected to harassment and wrongful detainment." "We are aware. We need you to come in immediately. There's urgency on the health policy front, but also, this incident has escalated to national attention." Alana nodded. She glanced at the team around the table. Their expressions carried unease, tension, the weight of bureaucracy recognizing a moral wrong. She closed her eyes briefly, feeling the adrenaline ebb, leaving a simmering clarity. The legal counsel spoke again. "Once you arrive, you will meet with internal affairs and the federal oversight team. This will be delicate. The officer in question has a history of complaints that were dismissed or downgraded. We need your account to be airtight." Alana's fingers hovered over her notes. I know the pattern, she said quietly. This isn't just one officer. It's the system enabling him. One aide looked uneasy. It's intense, realizing your detainment wasn't isolated. We've pulled prior records. You may want to be prepared for pushback, even from higher-ups within law enforcement. I am prepared, she said. Her voice carried a weight that filled the room. The difference this time is the chain of command is listening. That's all that matters for now. Minutes stretched. Phones buzzed, messages pinged. The aide finally said, Transport will take you. We'll ensure secure passage. You shouldn't speak publicly until the process is complete. Alana nodded. She stood, checking her gloves. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant and old paper, the kind of scent that clung to government buildings. She felt her pulse steady, each beat a reminder of control regained. They walked her to a vehicle waiting in the shadowed parking lot. Agents flanked her, professional but unintrusive. The city streets blurred past. The hospital, the station, the intersections where bystanders had watched but done nothing. She allowed herself a cold clarity. Her profession had granted her trust, authority, and now leverage. The officer had underestimated the reach and visibility of her position. Inside the car, one agent spoke. We'll keep you updated. This will move quickly. Good, Alana said. Because justice doesn't wait. The ride was tense, the silence broken only by occasional radio chatter. Each mile stitched the incident into a larger narrative. The exposure of bias, the responsibility of power, the weight of public scrutiny. They arrived at a nondescript federal building, the doors sliding open with a muted hiss. Agents guided her inside, where uniformed officers and federal personnel awaited. Alana's eyes scanned the room, noting the layout. Tables for documentation, screens showing live feeds, officers moving with choreographed precision. Nothing chaotic, nothing casual. The machine of oversight hummed around her, poised and calculating. Dr. Reed, said a senior federal agent, tall, square-shouldered. We've reviewed the preliminary footage. We need your statement recorded immediately, and then we'll proceed with a briefing on the officer's record and departmental protocols. Alana set her bag down, adjusting her coat. I want the statement to be thorough. I want it recorded, time-stamped, and cross-referenced. Every word matters. The agent nodded. Understood. We'll begin now. The recording device clicked on. Alana began recounting, succinctly but fully. The lights, the sound of the siren, the officer's tone, the gestures, the cuffing, the bystanders. Every phrase carried weight, every pause deliberate. The room remained silent except for her voice, the device, and the subtle hum of the building's ventilation. Were there witnesses? The agent asked. Yes, several. One filmed the incident, one nurse spoke, others paused but did not intervene. Their silence is also part of the narrative. Good. We will secure their accounts. Alana's focus remained unbroken. She noted the officer's expression when seeing her credentials, the subtle change in his posture when confronted with authority beyond his own. She spoke calmly, unemotionally, yet every word revealed the injustice. After the statement, she was escorted to a small office. The federal team outlined next steps. Internal affairs inquiry, media liaison preparation, and potential public response strategies. Alana absorbed each point. The incident had escalated, but now it moved into channels where systemic accountability could function. She leaned back in the chair, exhaling slowly. Her mind catalogued the officer's behavior, the system's failures, the bystander's hesitation. She recognized the larger pattern: microaggressions, unchecked authority, institutional bias. But now leverage had shifted. The federal attention ensured the narrative could not be buried, and the officer's privilege would be scrutinized. Her phone buzzed. Secure line. She answered. Dr. Reed. The voice was calm, professional. This is the White House liaison. The president has been briefed. Your safety is a priority, but so is swift accountability. Expect support from federal law enforcement and the Department of Justice. Alana nodded, though the line couldn't see. Understood. Thank you. She hung up and looked out the window. The city lights blurred into streaks of amber and white. The night no longer felt oppressive. The moment of power imbalance was still fresh, still raw, but she had shifted from being a target to being a witness, a recorder, and soon an agent of accountability. The officer who had detained her remained an enigma, a man insulated by bureaucracy and selective enforcement, but the chain of oversight now traced back to him. Every step of the upcoming investigation would test the integrity of that chain. Alana understood the stakes. Exposure of systemic racism, potential consequences for the officer, and the broader implications for all who assumed their authority was unassailable. She straightened in her chair. The work ahead would be exhaustive, politically charged, and emotionally taxing. Yet it was necessary. Justice required endurance, not speed. For the first time since the curbside detainment, Alana felt a measure of control return. Not victory, control. And control was the first step toward accountability. The footage hit the internet before the sun had fully risen. A single clip, 30 seconds long, blurred at the edges yet unmistakable in content. A black woman, hands tense at her sides, cuffed by a uniformed officer whose expression was equal parts irritation and assertion. The background buzz of the city, distant voices, flashing lights, and a faint echo of a siren painted the scene with a grim realism. Alana sat in her apartment, laptop balanced on her knees. Her eyes skimmed the comments, the first wave of public reaction. Outrage, disbelief, and the predictable mix of skepticism. A dozen major news outlets picked it up within the hour, framing the story with measured headlines. Doctor detained. Alleged racial bias in police stop. Surgeon General candidate faces wrongful arrest. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Calls from aides, legal counsel, and her hospital's administration came in rapid succession. Each conversation confirmed the same truth. The officer's actions had been captured, broadcast, and could no longer be ignored. The narrative was shifting, yet she knew the officer and the department would cling to procedure and protocol, trying to dilute the undeniable bias with legal jargon and official distancing. Alana's eyes narrowed at the grainy footage. She recognized the gestures, the pauses, the subtle intimidation. Every movement revealed the underlying power dynamics. The officer's tone, controlled yet cutting, replayed in her mind. You people always think the rules don't apply. It was more than words. It was a declaration of assumed authority, unchecked and weaponized. A text message popped up from the White House liaison. Media briefing in 1 hour. Be prepared. Alana stood pacing. The exposure was double-edged. On one side, the world now saw the injustice. On the other, she knew how media narratives could twist. Every frame of the footage could be dissected, reinterpreted, or questioned. Public opinion might rally behind her, or doubts could be sown to protect the officer, the department, or systemic complacency. Her legal counsel arrived, carrying printed transcripts and notes. We've compiled witness statements, timestamps, everything relevant. The video speaks for itself, but we need your context. Your testimony adds credibility, authority, and clarity. I'll provide it, Alana said. Every detail, every gesture. This isn't just about me. It's about exposing the patterns. They worked quickly, reviewing statements, annotating the video, noting microaggressions, coded language, and procedural deviations. Every minute counted. The media would move fast, and public perception was malleable. Outside, news vans began to gather near her apartment building. Cameras framed the streets, waiting for any glimpse of her. Reporters whispered into microphones, editors spoke over headsets, and the machinery of public attention accelerated into motion. Alana's pulse remained steady, her focus on the narrative she controlled through facts, chronology, and measured testimony. By midday, the first televised segment aired. A news anchor recounted the incident, showing blurred footage while maintaining journalistic neutrality. Panelists debated protocol versus bias. Alana watched silently, noting the emphasis, the questions posed, and the absence of key context. The discussion framed her as a professional caught in an unusual circumstance, while some commentators speculated about overreaction. Her phone rang again. It was a reporter. "Dr. Reed, can we get an on-camera statement?" "I'll provide a formal statement through my counsel," she said. "I won't comment spontaneously. Accuracy matters more than sound bites." The line went silent. She closed her eyes briefly, considering the officer's possible reaction. He may have believed that body cam footage would protect him. He may have assumed the narrative could be controlled. But exposure was a double-edged tool. Now, leverage existed beyond departmental walls. Later that afternoon, the hospital sent a formal press release acknowledging her credentials, affirming her professional reputation, and condemning harassment. Her colleagues shared statements on social media, emphasizing procedural accountability and institutional support. Each post added weight to the unfolding story, but Alana remained cautious. Visibility could also invite targeted criticism, attempts to undermine her credibility, or personal attacks. She returned to her laptop, reviewing timestamps, witness accounts, and cross-referencing media coverage. Every detail mattered. The officer's approach, his gestures, the cadence of his voice, her responses, the environment, the bystanders. The exposure wasn't just viral, it was evidence. An aide arrived with a secure briefing. "The White House wants you ready for a press statement tomorrow. Internal review is underway, and departmental accountability will be pursued." Alana nodded. "Ensure the language emphasizes systemic issues, not just one officer's misconduct. This isn't an isolated event. It's the pattern." "Yes, ma'am." As the day waned, Alana stepped onto her balcony. The city lights stretched into darkness, punctuated by distant sirens and street lamps. Exposure had brought attention, but it had also brought scrutiny, threats of professional pushback, and the heavy weight of responsibility. She inhaled deeply, acknowledging the duality of the moment. She was both the subject and the arbiter of the narrative. Later that evening, she received an encrypted file from her counsel. Internal memos, prior complaints against the officer, emails showing systemic dismissal of bias claims. She scrolled through each document, confirming her suspicions. The department had protected him, ignored warnings, and fostered a culture where authority could be abused without consequence. Alana closed the laptop. The weight of exposure had shifted. She was no longer a solitary target. The public, her colleagues, and the federal oversight had acknowledged the injustice. Yet the work had only begun. Legal proceedings, departmental hearings, media scrutiny, and public discourse awaited. Her reflection in the window revealed a woman poised, determined, and aware of the stakes. Justice was not automatic. It required persistence, precision, and unyielding attention to truth. Exposure had illuminated the problem, but it was only the first act in a long sequence of accountability. The phone buzzed once more. It was the White House liaison. "Dr. Reed will brief you on next steps in 30 minutes. Prepare for a coordinated media response. Internal affairs and federal oversight will act swiftly." Alana's jaw tightened. She was ready. Exposure was not the end. It was the beginning. Every eye on the story, every frame of footage, and every conversation would contribute to a reckoning, one that demanded attention, accuracy, and persistence. Alana sat in her office at the hospital, the city skyline spilling gold and amber across her windows. The room was quiet, save for the low hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional distant call from the emergency department. She removed her coat and gloves, setting them neatly on a chair. She had spent the day navigating federal procedures, media exposure, and departmental oversight. Now, alone, the weight of the personal toll settled. Her eyes drifted to a framed photograph on her desk. Her mentor, Dr. Lillian Price, shaking hands with a young Alana in her first residency. The memory stirred both pride and a shadow of past injustice. Alana remembered the subtle exclusions, the dismissive comments, the whispered doubts about her competence. Moments that had built a quiet resilience, sharpened her awareness, and taught her to navigate a world that frequently underestimated her. A knock at the door pulled her from reflection. It was Dr. Price, carrying a cup of coffee. "You've made headlines," she said, setting the cup down. "And you look like you've carried the weight of the world on your shoulders." Alana smiled faintly. "It's not just the headlines. It's the pattern, the institutional indifference I've seen for decades." Price nodded, taking a seat. "I remember the first time someone questioned your capability solely because of your race. You handled it with precision, but I could see it hurt. This incident isn't new to you. It's just more visible." Alana's hands gripped the edge of her desk. "Every time you think the next person will be different, that the institution will act fairly. But it doesn't. And now here we are." Price leaned forward. "But you've changed the equation this time. Visibility matters. Exposure matters. Your response will shape precedent, not just for yourself but for everyone who follows." Alana exhaled slowly. She thought of the countless microaggressions she had endured. Colleagues dismissing her diagnoses, administrators ignoring complaints, patients assuming incompetence based on skin color. She had long learned to respond with composure, to record incidents quietly, to rise above. Yet each memory was a scar, a ledger of moments where authority had been wielded against her unfairly. "I've spent my career saving lives," she said. "Yet a uniform and a badge can strip dignity in minutes. It's maddening. The personal cost is one thing, but the systemic cost. How many people suffer in silence?" Price placed a hand on hers. "You've endured it, yes. But you've also prepared for moments like this. Now your experience serves as both shield and weapon. The officer who detained you underestimated your reach, your expertise, and your resolve. That's his mistake." Alana nodded, though her expression remained somber. The incident had revealed more than bias. It had exposed the fragility of public trust in institutions meant to protect. She thought of the bystanders, the hospital staff who had watched but hesitated, and the officers who claimed procedure as a shield. The pattern was persistent. Power misused, voices silenced, and the marginalized left to navigate a system that often failed them. "History isn't kind to those who remain silent," she said. "And I can't be silent anymore." Price's eyes softened. "You won't be. And that's why this moment matters. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's systemic. You can influence change, enforce accountability, and ensure the story doesn't vanish into bureaucracy." Alana's gaze shifted to her notes from the day. Timestamps, witness statements, video frames, and legal briefs. Each piece was a building block, evidence of injustice, a record of what had transpired. "Every detail counts," she murmured. "Every gesture, every word, every second." Price glanced at the wall calendar. "There will be hearings, statements, and likely attempts to discredit you. Prepare mentally, strategically, and emotionally. But remember, truth, consistency, and authority are your strongest allies." Alana leaned back, thinking of her parents, both of whom had navigated professional and personal challenges with dignity in the face of systemic bias. Their stories were embedded in her DNA. Resilience, intelligence, and vigilance. She understood now that the current confrontation was not an isolated event but the culmination of a lifelong pattern. Hers and countless others, intersecting with public visibility. Her phone buzzed. It was a notification from the news outlet. Live panel discussion analyzing her detainment. She opened it, watching analysts debate the incident, some framing it as a procedural mishap, others acknowledging racial profiling. Every word reinforced her urgency. Public perception could sway accountability, but narrative manipulation was relentless. Alana stood, walking to the window. The city stretched beneath her, indifferent and vast. The lights flickered like sentinels in the night, witnesses to countless unseen struggles. She breathed in deeply, centering herself. Exposure had illuminated the problem, but it was only the beginning of the work required to secure accountability, systemic change, and public recognition of injustice. The door opened again. Her assistant entered, carrying new legal documents. Dr. Reed, Internal Affairs, has requested a formal submission of all records, timestamps and statements. They want your complete chronology for the upcoming review. Alana took the folder, flipping through each page with practiced attention. Every incident, every report, every interaction mattered. The record would be her shield, her evidence, and her means to ensure that the officer could not hide behind bureaucratic inertia. "I'll compile it tonight," she said. "Ensure witnesses are contacted for supplemental statements. Every detail will strengthen the record." The assistant nodded. "Understood. Do you want me to coordinate with federal oversight as well?" "Yes," Alana replied. "We can't rely solely on internal processes. Transparency is critical. This isn't just about one officer. It's about ensuring the system is held accountable." Alana returned to her desk, assembling her thoughts and materials. She felt the familiar tension, exhaustion tempered by resolve, frustration mixed with strategy. Her history had prepared her for this, yet the intensity of public scrutiny and systemic confrontation was undeniable. She paused, reflecting on every challenge she had faced in medicine. The patients ignored, the colleagues dismissive, the opportunities withheld. Each moment had honed her ability to persevere, to navigate institutional barriers, and to demand accountability without compromising integrity. Her phone buzzed again. A secure message from federal oversight. "Internal review scheduled. Prepare for testimony." Alana exhaled. The stage was set. Exposure, history, and the evidence she meticulously compiled would converge. The officer who had detained her, the department that had shielded him, and the system that enabled injustice would face scrutiny. The stakes were higher than personal vindication. They encompassed systemic accountability, the visibility of bias, and the precedent for how authority interacts with marginalized individuals. Alana recognized the dual responsibility, to herself and to every person who had suffered similar indignities silently. She leaned forward, organizing her materials. Every fact, every gesture, every documented nuance mattered. The history of injustice would inform the path forward. She would speak, record, and act, not from anger alone, but from strategy, clarity, and the authority her experience demanded. The courtroom smelled of varnished wood and polished brass, the air thick with tension. Reporters lined the back, their cameras ready, microphones angled for every word. Alana entered, flanked by her legal counsel, and took her seat at the witness table. Her posture was straight, controlled, a silent assertion of authority and focus. Across the room, the officer sat rigid, hands clasped, eyes flicking nervously toward the gallery. For the first time, the procedural armor he had relied on for years seemed brittle under scrutiny. Internal affairs and federal oversight officials positioned themselves strategically, their presence a quiet but formidable reminder of accountability. The hearing began with formalities. The presiding officer called the session to order, enumerating charges and procedures. Then the questioning commenced. "Dr. Reed," an investigator began, voice neutral. "Please describe the incident as it occurred." Alana spoke clearly, measured, recounting the curbside stop with precise attention to gestures, tone, and timing. "The officer approached my vehicle, flashlight sweeping my face, hands, the interior. He demanded my license, ignored verification, and issued commands without cause. He referred to me with racially coded language, asserting control beyond legal justification. And the handcuffs?" the investigator prompted. "They were applied unnecessarily, with pressure causing discomfort." "Complied fully. No point did I resist." The officer interpreted my calm, measured responses as defiance. Across the table, the officer's lawyer interjected. "Objection." Leading the witness. The presiding officer allowed the objection but signaled for continuation. Alana's legal counsel leaned forward. "Proceed." The questioning continued, dialogue heavy, focused on contradictions and omissions. The officer testified next, claiming procedural adherence, standard protocol, and misinterpretation of his tone. Each statement was met with recorded evidence: body cam footage, witness accounts, hospital verification, and timestamps. Alana remained poised, observing every nuance. The officer's hesitation, the subtle shifts when confronted with incontrovertible facts, and the absence of corroborating testimony for his assertions. She spoke only when prompted, each sentence a careful blend of truth, documentation, and unflinching clarity. A reporter's camera captured the tension in real time. Questions about bias, authority, and discretion framed the discourse, but Alana's testimony anchored the narrative in verifiable reality. Microaggressions, coded language, and systemic patterns emerged not as opinion but as demonstrable facts. During cross-examination, the officer grew visibly tense. Attempts to deflect responsibility, emphasize protocol, and introduce procedural ambiguity faltered under evidence-backed questioning. Alana's legal counsel guided her responses: concise, fact-driven, and unyielding. "Did you at any point threaten the officer?" the opposing counsel asked. "No," Alana replied evenly. "I stated facts. Threats imply intent to harm. I simply documented the incident and sought accountability. The officer's actions, not my words, violated legal and ethical standards." The room was silent for a moment, the weight of her words settling over observers. Each pause emphasized accountability. Each documented detail reinforced the broader pattern: authority unchecked, bias unchallenged, and systemic protection of misconduct. Internal Affairs presented prior complaints against the officer, highlighting ignored warnings and procedural gaps. The presiding officer examined each, flipping through folders, occasionally glancing at the screen showing body cam footage. Alana's testimony was supplemented by hospital personnel, each recounting her professionalism, dedication, and the unnecessary detainment that evening. Dialogue dominated these sections, revealing disbelief, moral judgment, and complicity in silence. Every exchange underscored institutional dynamics that had enabled abuse. Questions about public perception arose. Alana responded, "Public accountability is essential. Exposure ensures systemic checks function properly. Without scrutiny, patterns of bias persist." By mid-afternoon, the hearing reached deliberation. Observers murmured quietly. The officer sat tense, aware that the record, evidence, and visibility left little room for evasion. Alana's demeanor remained calm, the culmination of years of navigating bias informing her composure. Before adjournment, the presiding officer addressed both parties. "The evidence, testimony, and corroborated accounts indicate procedural misconduct and the presence of bias. Further review and recommendations will follow." Alana exhaled silently, relief tempered with awareness. The officer's procedural defenses had been challenged, his authority scrutinized, and systemic patterns exposed. Yet she knew the outcome would extend beyond this room: administrative action, potential disciplinary measures, and public acknowledgement. Outside the courtroom, reporters awaited. Questions flooded, cameras rolled, but Alana remained composed. Her legal team guided her responses, emphasizing systemic accountability rather than personal confrontation. Each word reinforced the narrative: injustice documented, authority challenged, and bias exposed. As she left, she noted the small gestures of acknowledgement from bystanders, the subtle recognition from fellow medical professionals, and the quiet but unwavering support of federal oversight. The moment was not victory. It was a pivotal assertion that accountability was possible, even within entrenched structures. Alana returned to her car, city lights flickering across the windshield. She reflected on the hearing. Dialogue had carried the weight, evidence had anchored the narrative, and procedural scrutiny had shifted the power dynamic. The officer had been confronted not by anger alone, but by a meticulous record, public exposure, and strategic testimony. Tonight she would rest briefly, aware that the next stages, administrative outcomes, media engagement, and continued advocacy, required endurance. The hearing had demonstrated one truth: authority could be challenged, bias could be documented, and systems could be compelled to act. Alana's phone buzzed. An encrypted message from federal oversight confirming follow-up hearings and internal reviews. She read it silently, mind already mapping the next steps. The process was ongoing, but the trajectory was clear. She started the engine, city streets humming beneath her. Justice was incremental, demanding precision, persistence, and strategic action. The officer's accountability would not be instantaneous, yet exposure, evidence, and testimony had set in motion a chain reaction that could no longer be ignored. The morning after the hearing, the city felt different. News vans crowded the streets outside the federal building, reporters moving like coordinated units, microphones extended toward anyone exiting doors. Social media carried the footage, the testimony, and endless commentary dissecting every frame, every phrase, every gesture. Alana arrived at the hospital early. The emergency department was in motion as usual, but whispers followed her down the hall. Nurses, residents, and attending physicians approached quietly, offering nods of acknowledgement, subdued congratulations, or simply a shared recognition of injustice confronted. Dialogue bubbled in hushed tones about procedural misconduct, systemic bias, and the courage it took to confront both simultaneously. The hospital's administration convened an internal meeting. Dr. Reed's handling of the incident reflects both professionalism and strategic authority, the chief medical officer stated. We will fully support her throughout ongoing federal and administrative inquiries. Alana listened, offering concise acknowledgement. Her attention was divided between patient care, institutional support, and the ongoing media attention. Outside, reporters attempted to capture statements, but her legal team ensured only measured, strategic communications reached the public. The officer's department issued a formal statement, a denial of intentional bias, reaffirmation of procedural adherence, and a promise of internal review. Public reactions varied. Some questioned institutional culture, others debated media framing, yet the footage and testimony had anchored the narrative. Misconduct and bias were present. Internal disciplinary actions began. The officer was placed on administrative leave, and prior complaints were re-examined. Conversations among colleagues, fellow officers, and oversight personnel revealed the cumulative effect. The chain of accountability had begun to tighten. Dialogue within these circles exposed tension, fear, and defensive posturing. Alana continued her medical duties but felt the subtle toll. Patients, while unaware of the full public story, sensed the residual tension in her movements. Every interaction carried unspoken weight. The emotional labor of confronting systemic injustice, the cognitive load of navigating exposure and accountability, and the persistent need for strategic composure. She spoke with her legal counsel. We must prepare for potential pushback, media scrutiny, and attempts to shift focus onto personal behavior rather than systemic accountability. Yes, the counsel agreed. Expect petitions, departmental appeals, and public narratives attempting to dilute the facts. Your record, testimony, and visibility are your strongest defenses. By midweek, public protests emerged near the precinct. Signs called for justice, accountability, and institutional reform. Alana observed from a distance, noting both support and opposition. The visual and verbal manifestations of public scrutiny amplified systemic pressure, compelling the department toward concrete action. Simultaneously, internal policy reviews began. Meetings focused on traffic stops, discretionary enforcement, and bias training. Conversations revealed an institution attempting to reconcile public exposure with procedural defense, navigating both optics and accountability. Alana received messages from colleagues in other hospitals and federal agencies. Some offered practical support. Others shared stories of similar experiences, now emboldened by visibility. Dialogue extended beyond the immediate context, forming networks of awareness, advocacy, and solidarity. Despite the progress, Alana recognized the ongoing cost. Emotional exhaustion, public scrutiny, and the mental strain of systemic confrontation weighed heavily. The officer's behavior had exposed vulnerabilities in authority structures, but personal resilience demanded vigilance, strategic action, and continuous documentation. By evening, she convened a team meeting at the hospital, addressing internal staff and ensuring clarity in communication protocols, patient care continuity, and professional responsibilities. Her leadership emphasized procedural integrity, systemic awareness, and collective accountability. Alana reflected quietly later, reviewing the trajectory. Exposure had catalyzed immediate consequences: administrative leave, internal review, media attention, but the broader work of institutional reform remained. Accountability, she knew, extended beyond a single officer to patterns of behavior, implicit bias, and organizational culture. The city lights outside her window blurred in the rain, reflections stretching like elongated threads of consequence. Each conversation, each media segment, each internal review contributed to a shifting equilibrium, where authority, visibility, and justice intersected. Alana's phone buzzed with a secure notification. Internal Affairs had scheduled follow-up meetings, oversight panels, and potential policy recommendations. The momentum was irreversible. The officer's actions, once isolated, now served as a catalyst for scrutiny and reform. She leaned back, acknowledging both progress and cost. Public attention, legal accountability, and systemic pressure had begun, but the personal and emotional ramifications remained. Trauma, exhaustion, and vigilance would persist beyond immediate exposure. Yet the trajectory was undeniable. Procedural abuse had been confronted, authority questioned, and systemic bias exposed. Dialogue, evidence, and visibility had shifted the balance. Alana exhaled, preparing for the ongoing process. Justice, she knew, was neither instantaneous nor complete. It was cumulative, incremental, and dependent on persistence, precision, and unyielding attention to truth. The city had changed in subtle ways. Sirens no longer carried the same unease for Alana. They were a reminder of authority held accountable, of systems challenged. The officer had been removed from active duty. Internal reviews were underway, and policy discussions were being implemented across departments. Yet the work was unfinished, the personal costs still present in quiet moments. Alana walked through the hospital corridors, observing staff and patients. Conversations whispered in hallways, acknowledging the incident, discussing reforms, sharing experiences. Dialogue carried weight. Acknowledgement of systemic bias, the importance of vigilance, and the value of visibility. She listened, guided, and affirmed. Each interaction reinforced her understanding that justice extended beyond a single moment. It was embedded in culture, procedure, and awareness. At a press briefing organized by the Department of Health, Alana addressed the nation. Cameras framed her with neutral lighting, microphones capturing each carefully chosen word. "Yesterday," she began, voice steady, "we witnessed an incident that should never have occurred. It highlighted systemic failures, bias, and misuse of authority. My detainment was unnecessary, unjust, and rooted in factors unrelated to procedure or safety. The response of oversight agencies, federal authorities, and media coverage has demonstrated that accountability is possible when transparency is maintained." Questions followed, some challenging, others supportive. Alana answered with precision, emphasizing patterns over individual blame, systemic reform over retribution. Dialogue dominated as reporters sought clarity, witnesses corroborated her statements, and the public absorbed the narrative. Back at the hospital, she met briefly with her surgical team. Conversations were practical but layered with emotion, recognition of her resilience, the visible effects of public scrutiny, and gratitude for her leadership under pressure. Staff shared personal anecdotes of subtle discrimination, validating her concerns and reinforcing the broader context. Even in moments of routine work, suture closure, patient consultation, emergency response, Alana felt the residual tension of the incident. Trauma, vigilance, and professional responsibility intertwined, creating an awareness that authority could still be misused, even when accountability was possible. Weeks later, the officer faced formal disciplinary action. Public statements detailed the findings. Bias had influenced the stop, procedural misconduct was confirmed, and systemic safeguards failed to prevent escalation. Dialogue between oversight committees, legal counsel, and media underscored the gravity. Authority carries responsibility, visibility enforces accountability, and systemic failures must be addressed. Alana reflected privately on the emotional cost. Relief coexisted with lingering tension, a recognition that survival through injustice leaves lasting impressions. Each encounter, each microaggression endured, had prepared her for public exposure, but it could not erase fatigue or unease. She acknowledged trauma without surrendering to it, embracing resilience as both shield and instrument. She received a call from federal oversight. "Dr. Reed," the liaison said, "the reviews, hearings, and media coverage have set precedent. Policies are being reviewed, bias training expanded, and departmental accountability reinforced. Your documentation and testimony were central." Alana paused. "Ensure continued monitoring," she said. "Exposure is insufficient if it isn't followed by sustained reform." "Yes, ma'am," the liaison replied. That evening, Alana walked along the riverfront. Lights reflected in the water, sirens faint in the distance. The city moved on, indifferent and persistent, yet forever altered by the events she had endured and exposed. Her mind catalogued progress and remaining challenges. Policy revisions, cultural shifts, accountability mechanisms. Justice was partial but present, and vigilance remained essential. In the solitude of the walk, she contemplated the broader implications. Individual misconduct, unchecked by oversight, perpetuated systemic inequities. Visibility, documentation, and persistence were tools for change. Her experience illuminated not just personal resilience but structural responsibility. Alana returned home, preparing for the next day. Patient care awaited, administrative oversight continued, and public engagement persisted. She acknowledged the emotional cost, the fatigue, and the trauma, but also the tangible impact of exposure, advocacy, and meticulous action. By nightfall, the city's hum had softened. The sirens, once symbols of threat, were now neutral, even reassuring. The officer's removal and the ongoing policy scrutiny marked a shift. Accountability had been enacted, precedent established, and systemic awareness heightened. Alana settled at her desk, reviewing ongoing documentation, coordinating with federal oversight, and preparing for further testimony or press engagement. Each step reinforced the principle that justice required endurance, strategy, and precise attention to patterns of authority and bias. The night ended quietly. The city slept, but the mechanisms of accountability continued to function. Alana reflected. Justice is incremental, systemic, and persistent. Exposure alone is insufficient without strategic action, documented evidence, and sustained advocacy. The officer faced consequences, systemic weaknesses were exposed, and the public witnessed the process. Yet the cost to her, emotional, cognitive, and physical, remained a reminder that confronting entrenched power exacts a personal toll. As she turned off the lights, Alana felt a tempered sense of closure. The sirens faded into the distance, leaving only vigilance, reflection, and the ongoing responsibility of leadership. Justice had been enacted, accountability enforced, but resilience and awareness remained indispensable companions. Weeks after the public exposure and internal reviews, the officer's standing had collapsed quietly but decisively. Administrative leave became suspension with pay withheld, and internal affairs reports accumulated evidence of repeated misconduct, selective enforcement, and a pattern of bias. Federal oversight monitored the department, ensuring accountability at every level. Alana sat in her office, reviewing a stack of reports. Each document chronicled prior incidents, complaints dismissed, and internal memos acknowledging procedural gaps. Dialogue between supervisors, oversight personnel, and legal counsel revealed tension, bureaucratic defensiveness, fear of public backlash, and pressure to implement tangible reforms. Every page underscored the systemic reinforcement that had allowed the officer to act with impunity. Her phone rang. It was her legal counsel. "Dr. Reed, the officer has requested an appeal. We have the option to respond with full documentation, evidence, and testimony. It's critical that we maintain meticulous records." "I want everything submitted," Alana said. "No ambiguity. Every detail of misconduct, every procedural failure, every microaggression, documented and cross-referenced." "Yes, ma'am," the counsel replied. Later, a briefing was called with hospital leadership and federal liaison. Alana presented a timeline of the incident, overlaying internal complaints, public exposure, and the resulting administrative actions. Dialogue highlighted both individual and systemic accountability, emphasizing transparency, institutional responsibility, and procedural reform. The team discussed bias training, oversight protocols, and channels for reporting misconduct. Alana noticed subtle shifts in colleagues' demeanor, respect tempered with recognition of the emotional labor she had endured. Conversations reflected not just validation but acknowledgement that confronting entrenched authority carried risk, fatigue, and lasting impact. Outside, news outlets continued to cover the unfolding story. Headlines shifted. Officer suspended amid systemic bias allegations. Surgeon General candidate exposes departmental failures. Policy reforms proposed following public exposure. Each segment reinforced the narrative. Authority could no longer act unchecked when exposed to scrutiny backed by evidence. Alana's phone buzzed with another secure message from the White House liaison. Internal oversight confirms full cooperation from department. Policy changes recommended. Officers' appeal timeline noted. She read the message, fingers tapping lightly on her desk. Every step, from detainment to exposure, testimony, and administrative action, had contributed to this reckoning. The officer's defense weakened against the documented record, the public visibility, and the unflinching testimony she had provided. Her legal counsel returned with an updated summary. The officer's appeal will be reviewed, but precedent, public attention, and evidence heavily favor accountability. We recommend no concessions. Alana nodded. Ensure oversight continues, and that any departmental resistance is documented. Accountability cannot be partial. Weeks passed. Internal reviews concluded. The officer's misconduct was formally recognized, disciplinary measures enforced, and protocols revised. Dialogue among department officials, oversight personnel, and legal counsel reflected tension between tradition and reform, but the result was clear. Failure to act had consequences. Alana continued her work at the hospital, balancing patient care with ongoing engagement in oversight processes. The emotional cost lingered. Stress, fatigue, and moments of residual tension in public spaces. Yet the systemic shift provided a measure of satisfaction. Exposure, evidence, and persistence had forced accountability. One afternoon, she received a call from a young nurse at the hospital. "Dr. Reed, I just wanted to say, seeing you handle everything with professionalism and courage, it's inspiring. It makes me feel like I can speak up too." Alana smiled faintly, a quiet recognition of ripple effects. "Document everything," she replied. "Visibility and persistence matter. Change doesn't happen overnight, but every voice contributes." The city outside moved as usual. Sirens, traffic, pedestrians. But the weight of past injustice had been challenged, authority had been scrutinized, and systemic reforms had begun. Dialogue, exposure, and meticulous documentation had created accountability that could not easily be ignored or reversed. That evening, Alana reflected on the journey. The personal cost was real. Emotional strain, public scrutiny, and the cognitive load of navigating bias and authority. Yet the outcome validated strategic persistence, meticulous record-keeping, and unwavering focus. Authority had been held accountable, systemic patterns exposed, and public awareness increased. She stood by her office window, watching the city lights flicker across the skyline. The officer's downfall, the reforms initiated, and the visibility of systemic bias marked a pivotal moment, not just for her but for the culture of accountability itself. Justice, she realized, was incremental but achievable when anchored in evidence, dialogue, and unwavering resolve. The cameras were gone. That was the first thing Alana noticed when the doors closed behind her. No red lights, no shouted questions, no hands reaching for sound bites. Just a quiet conference room, too clean, too white, the seal of the Department of Health mounted on the wall like a promise that had been tested. She sat alone at the long table. The hearing had ended 3 hours earlier. Findings read into record. Violations confirmed. Suspension without pay. Referral to federal review. Words stacked carefully, legally, deliberately. No applause. No outrage. Just consequences, slow and exact. This room was for aftermath. A staffer entered, mid-30s, efficient, eyes respectful but guarded. "They're ready when you are," he said. "Who?" Alana asked. "The press briefing team. And, your family is waiting in the adjacent room." She nodded. 5 minutes. He left. Alana rested her palms flat on the table. They were steady. That surprised her. She thought of the night on the curb, the hum of traffic, the weight of the officer's hand, the certainty that nothing she said would matter until someone else said it for her. Power, she had learned again, did not listen. It recalculated. The door opened softly. Her mother stepped in first, smaller than Alana remembered, coat folded over her arm. Her father followed, slower, eyes sharp with concern that hadn't dulled with age. "You don't have to do this again today," her mother said. "I do," Alana replied. Her father studied her face. "You already won." Alana shook her head. "No, I survived." They sat together for a moment. No speeches. No reassurances. Just presence. Her mother reached for her hand. "When they took you," she said quietly, "I felt it. Same feeling as before. Same fear." "I know," Alana said. "That's the part they never see," her father added. The echo. Knock. The briefing room buzzed low when Alana entered. Reporters turned. Microphones angled upward. Screens lit with her name, her title spelled correctly now, uniformly. She took the podium. No applause. She looked out and began without preamble. "Last week, I was detained during a routine traffic stop," she said. "Not because I posed a threat. Not because I violated the law. But because discretion was exercised without accountability." Pens moved. Cameras clicked. "This is not an isolated incident," she continued. "It is a pattern reinforced by silence, procedure, and the assumption that harm must be spectacular to matter." A reporter raised a hand. She ignored it. "I am speaking today not as an exception," Alana said, "but as evidence. Evidence that status does not shield dignity. Evidence that systems correct themselves only when forced to confront their own records." Another hand. Another. She finished. "I will continue my work," she said. "But I will not pretend that resilience cancels damage. Does not. It carries it." She stepped back. Questions followed. She answered some. Declined others. No heat. No defensiveness. Facts only. After, in the hallway, a young reporter approached cautiously. "Dr. Reed," he said. "Do you forgive him?" Alana stopped. Looked at him. "That's not the question," she said. "The question is whether the system learned anything without needing another body." She walked on. That evening, alone at home, the quiet felt unfamiliar. She stood at the sink, hands submerged in warm water, and realized they were shaking now. Delayed response. Common in trauma. She let it happen. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Internal reforms approved. Body cam policy amended. Independent review board seated. She read it once. Then again. Progress did not feel like relief. Felt like weight redistributed. Later, she sat on the balcony, city lights spread below. Somewhere sirens wailed. Not for her, not this time. She breathed through it. The image of the officer surfaced uninvited. His face at the end. Not rage. Calculation. The moment he realized the rules had edges, she did not feel satisfaction. She felt clarity. The cost had been real. Sleep fractured. Trust thinned. A knowledge reactivated that she had worked years to compartmentalize. She would carry it, not as a badge, as data. Inside, her phone lit again. A message from a medical student she'd never met. I saw what happened. I'm scared. But I'm still applying. Alana typed back. Stay sharp. Demand records. He set the phone down. Tomorrow she would return to work. Not unchanged, but intact. Above the city, clouds moved slowly, indifferent, as systems always were until named. Alana stayed seated, steady in the quiet, aware now of both the damage and the fact that it had not ended her. That, she knew, was not justice. But it was not nothing.